Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jon Andrew STILL with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. Coming at you. What day is today?
Thursday. Cinco de Mayo, John.
Happy Cinco de Mayo. Happy Dr. Strange Day. Happy Cinco de Mayo. So funny story. We had an esteemed guest was lined up for the show, and due to technical issues completely out of his control, we were unable to record with that guest. So I went to my trusty producer, Andrew Claudio. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, John.
And I said, hey, you want to talk about the Knicks for a little bit?
Sure. Why not?
He said, no, but you know what's funny?
What?
We talk every day.
Yeah, literally every day.
We talk every day for an hour actually it's like an hour and a half every week. We record a podcast together, just me and you, about the NBA, in which we intentionally do not talk about the Knicks because it is our Patreon podcast and we talk about the NBA, and we're on the playback, and we talk obviously we touch on the Knicks on there, but it's usually not just like two of us, and I don't know, we bounce around. So for two people that run a Knicks podcast, we actually really don't talk about the Knicks together a lot.
Nope. And I intentionally do that though, because
why?
It's not even that I don't have Knicks thoughts. I just recognize that like literally nobody obsesses over the Knicks more than you do. And the level of intelligence I feel that you and Jeremy have
that's
when you
nonsense.
Talk about it.
That is utter nonsense.
I'm not saying
nonsense.
I'm not saying I don't intelligently talk about them. I'm just saying I know where my skills are best used, and it's getting you guys to, not be interrupted in the conversation. I have Knicks thoughts if you'd like me to share them.
You literally just know your rolled yourself.
Yes. And I'd know my rolled and shut my mouth.
Can the Lakers hire you to go talk to Russell Westbrook?
Oh my gosh.
What would your fee be?
My fee would be 1/50th of his salary. There. That's I feel like that's a fair compensation.
What if they were like, you could sit next to Jack for a whole game and ask, and
this might get dark. Is Jack still going to games?
Oh, I didn't mean to get dark.
I'm just saying, I think he's no longer sitting courtside at games, unfortunately.
Who has he been replaced by? Leo or Denzel goes to games too, right?
Denzel goes to games. There were some David Beckham sightings last year. Gotta be honest, not watching Lakers for their courtside games much lately,
The young lady at the Heat games the last two nights, or the two games with the red boots, she has stood out. Shout out to anyone else who went on Twitter to seek out who that person was. And maybe it was just me and my wife, because we saw the outfit and we were like, we have to find out, but we could not find out who this person is. Person out there, if you're listening to the Knicks Film School Podcast, come reach out to us. We'll get you on the show and you can talk about your red boots.
Yes, person at Miami Heat game. Thank you for listening to this podcast for some reason.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review.
Oh yes, please. And a good review, by the way. To your point though, I'd love to banter about the Knicks for a little bit before I go see Doctor Strange. I know you're seeing Doctor Strange this afternoon. So let's do it. I should open up. Do you have, because you said you have many Knicks thoughts. Are there any big Knicks thoughts that you want to get off your chest before I ask you about the thing that you brought up to me before? It's funny. So much of the regular season became like anti-Thibs versus pro, at least in our world, it felt like anti-Thibs versus pro-Thibs, anti-Randle versus, I don't even know if there was a pro-Randle side of things, just more of a
don't blame Randle so much.
Right. Like, don't be so hard on him things, how much, like basically a blame game of who gets what of the pie chart, and I feel like we're now in the off season and looking back, the positives are starting to shine more, like the vitriol we all had for Thibs. And then when you look at what they were after the All-Star break, it was like a competent 500 basketball team that had the best defense without Kemba. And then you look at like what Quickly could have been if he got more playing time, and what Obi could have been if he got more playing time, and what RJ was once Randle kind of took a step back, or I guess when he took more of a lead role as a ball handler. And the thing I keep going back to is that we all have kind of put in our mind that the front office sees what we see, and that Julius being traded is going to be priority for number one for them as much as it is for us. And I'm getting closer to like, man, so what if they're actually more thinking like we have to put better pieces around Julius? Because that's the one thing I don't think anybody can spin as a positive, as much as Leon Rose tried to say he's another guy that averaged 20, 10, and 5. So I guess my first overall offseason thought is like, as much as we're cap or no capping what they can do once they trade Julius, are we doing that is it futile to do that? Because he's going to be here next year, and so is Obi, and it's not going to make sense.
I am increasingly of the belief. Let me ask, when you have when there's a situation in like real life, when people get into it and it's not going well, what's usually the if someone is to like, if you give advice to the person's like, man, been dealing with this person way too much, this and that. What's the advice you give them? The advice is usually like, why don't you just give it some time?
Yeah.
Right. Give it some time. I wonder, and it would actually shock me if this was not the sentiment inside MSG. It's like, let's give this some time. Let's give it time to breathe. Let's all go our separate ways. Let's go. Where was I saw a picture of him. Somebody posted. He was in like Lake Como.
He and Kendra went to Italy.
Yeah. Well, not just Italy. Like, I think they went to Lake Como.
Regardless, they went on vacation, a very well-deserved, or I guess for their case, well-needed off-season vacation. Yeah.
Yeah.
They got out of New York.
They got out of the Lions then. Stopped in Dallas first, which is the other part of it that I think is making me think this, which is like, again, is it possible like Julius Randle just happened to show up at the game that Worldwide West and Allen Houston were at? Like, yeah, sure, I guess. But like, I don't know. That struck me as like, this is not an organization that has like come to a tacit agreement with Julius Randle, be like, we're going to move you. We're going to try to work with you on like where to go and this, that, and the other thing. I think this is like, let's give it a breather and then let's come back with like a renewed spirit and energy and the whole thing. That said, maybe they find the deal they like. But
I guess it's where I look at the difference between how we're processing it and what the offseason goals are for the front office is like, are they looking at it as like the number one urgent thing is to open up a spot for Obi Toppin, which is, I think,
absolutely not
sentiment of the fan base, that every better version of this team next year has Julius Randle off of it, which I don't know. I'm like, we're the people calling for Thibs' head are going to still be there. But if Julius is still there after Thibs is fired, like, is Julius going to outlast all of these people? You know, which is what
Jesus Christ.
I don't know.
Why would you put that into the ether?
It's the doomsday multiverse scenario. Shout out Doctor Strange. You know,
so he outlives Leon, Thibs, Obi.
Yeah, why not?
God,
they have to fire Thibs, and then Leon, feeling the heat, trades all the young guys for not superstar X, and then lo and behold, 2025 rolls around. They're a 500 team with Julius Randle and on their next team president.
It's just, it's interesting because like we've talked about the front office and how they view things before, but like in particular, the notion of like something Bernard brought up in our text chain of like I've referenced this, like they want to win every deal. Like they want to be at an asset advantage. Mm-hmm. I still think that they are looking at this like, look, we have a distressed asset in Julius Randle. We have an improving asset in Obi Toppin. We're not going to deal either one or both or whatever unless we get commensurate value. And if we don't think we could get commensurate value for what we feel Julius Randle is actually worth, then we're not going to trade him. But at the same time, how in God's name would they be able to go into next season with the, like, I don't know if they're opening up, the schedule hasn't been released. So at some point they will play a home game. and if in that home game, Obi Toppin plays 11 minutes and Julius Randle plays 37 minutes from game one. Game one, the well will have been poisoned because fans will be like, we're not this shit again. This is not happening. So you would think that there would be discussions at the very least in the front office like, hey, this is a situation. This is going to become a situation if we don't get ahead of it somehow, some way. Right.
And that's where, did you watch Phoenix last night? Right.
Yes.
How much of the Phoenix Dallas game did you watch?
I watched the entire first half and then my eyes were open for periods of time throughout the second half.
So I'm looking at their rotation now and like Cam Johnson, 18 minutes. Why couldn't that be why? That's all we were asking for Obi is to play not 11.
Well, how about this? Chris Paul, I believe, played 29 minutes in game one.
I can look it up, but 36
I'm pretty sure
last night.
It's either 29 or 26, but he definitely sat for upwards of 20 minutes in game one. Now, game one, they had a kind of a handle on and whatever, but
29 minutes, Chris Paul.
There you go. And Chris Paul is 37 years old. So, but no, it's a difference in organizational philosophy. But again, where is that on the priority list? Hey, we got to make sure Thibs is okay with adjusting a little bit. We got to make sure that we work in the OB Julius combo for 5. Again, we had the same fucking conversation before last season. It's 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes a game. Yeah. Julius sits for 13. Obi plays together with him for 5. Boom. There's your 18 minutes. Should Obi be getting more? Yes. I'd love it if he was getting 38 minutes a game, but that's probably not going to be a reality whether Julius is on the team or not. In any case, my daughter is voicing her displeasure at the notion of Julius being on this team next year. Yes.
See, his presence infects its way all the way down to the youth. I think listen, just from watching the playoffs and seeing how these teams run their rotations, and even if there is no world where Thibs is going to play Obi with Randle, you don't then have to ride Randle like a superstar the way you did his first year where it was warranted and he was playing full first and full third quarters, and OB is seeing the first 4 or 5 minutes of the second and fourth, and then go away and sit down the rest of the game. What we saw the last 4 or 5 games when Randle was shut down, what we saw in the Miami game, what we saw in Washington, what we saw against Toronto, even if it was in half-hearted defenses, 35 and 41 points, those are real numbers. This isn't us opining for Frank to get to 20. Those were legitimate offensive performances. That
with all due respect,
what's up?
I think you're missing the forest for the trees.
What is it?
It's not about what Obi and Quickly did. It's about what the outline of the team looked like in the games that Julius didn't play. And I remember there were some stinkers. There was this 2 games that he missed. What was it? New Year's Eve or whatever.
Yeah,
right around
the 2 games right before the RJ buzzer beater. Yeah.
But I'm not saying anything revelatory here. How they played and how they looked and just kind of how they went about. It wasn't always good. They didn't always score a lot of points. But it's not like their offensive rating was great with Julius off the court this year. It wasn't. But they looked like a version of a team that you could be okay, with some improvement, with the right addition or 2. That looked a hell of a lot more like the style on offense, at least. Put aside Julius's issues on defense for a moment. It looked like a version of the team that we're watching in the playoffs, just in terms of how they play, just in terms and on defense too, because that team was so active. And what do you see every night you turn on any of these games? The more active teams, the teams that move the best on defense, those are usually the teams that are doing well. Now, the other part of this conversation, and if you're to go back to your original kind of premise of what is the front office thinking this summer? I would imagine they're watching the game last night and thinking what we're all thinking when we're watching Luka Doncic, which is I need one of those guys.
Yeah.
Who could do that.
Yeah.
Or watching Chris Paul and be I need a guy who can do that, and pick any series that is still going on at this point has a player or two players who you look at and like, that's all. I think that's all that they were thinking about the day Leon Rose was hired. I think that's all that they're thinking about now.
Kirk, if I'm wrong, sorry to interrupt you, but like,
yeah,
did you just include Luka Doncic and Chris Paul in the same category, John? Might that mean that Chris Paul is in the same category of superstars?
Do you want me to address this now briefly?
We can.
Yes, Chris Paul was certainly a superstar. And well, look, how about this? Once a superstar, always a superstar.
There you go.
You happy?
Yes, proud of you. Chris Paul, superstar. Devin Booker, not terrible either. Matched him in points last night. I might have exceeded him in points last night, actually. I'm still not tagging Book. Look, I don't want to have the full conversation again. I think your parameters of like, could you ever be considered number one in the league? The only difference I have is like, could you be considered top 5? And that's where my criteria is a little much of a stretch because there's like no one was ever considered number one but Michael Jordan during his time. Yes, no one was ever considered number one during Shaq, so I have to give some leeway to like, were you ever in that top 5 or that Mount Rushmore of the league at a time? And Devin Booker's going to finish top 5 in MVP this year, or Jason Tatum's going to finish top 5 in MVP this year. So that's where I put them in that category in a league rich with potentially superstar talent. We don't have to. We can save the conversation.
There will be more on this
or a Patreon in the future.
Yeah, in the future, exactly.
But to your point, the Knicks do not have a guy. I don't think that can ever become a superstar on their roster. No disrespect.
Why do you hate RJ?
Why do I hate RJ?
Why do you hate RJ?
Hey, Crow is in the oven. Don't worry.
Do you need me to send you the Crow?
Well, so the bigger thing that I was afraid of, I guess more that alarmed me from Jeremy's cap or no cap this weekend was like, there's no path to getting one. There really isn't.
Which I disagree with.
Really? So,
yeah. Well, I said it on the pod. I said, I think here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
One, I don't like, he basically boiled it down to because this is what has happened thus far. This is all that is going to happen. And my pushback was like, someone is going to pull a Harden and basically force his way off through, even if it gets unpleasant. And at some point, someone will do it before the age of 30 or before they have a year left on their contract. So that's the first thing. And then the other part of it, and I think this is where you were bringing up the Jalen Brunson discussion before we started recording. And I guess a lot of people are talking about this right now. People are saying, Andrew.
Yes, they are saying that, is Jalen Brunson worth this contract? Should the Knicks go out and get him right now? Is he, he hasn't obviously looked very good in the first 2 games against Phoenix. It was a really bad matchup for him. Like it happens in stages building these sorts of teams, where you're going to get a star or 2 stars. And it's important to just continue to move forward. And like right now, if you look at it, the Knicks don't appear to have an obvious path to getting a superstar, but that doesn't mean that one won't materialize or one won't develop within the next year and change. It's just about what they do in the position that they put themselves in over that time. You don't think it's somewhat generational, the version of superstar that skipped teams like the KD, Kyrie, LeBron, James Harden, like that generation didn't kind of come and go, and this generation we see now isn't more inclined to kind of like be happy where you are? Because I can't tell if like we just kind of all missed the boat. Like you mentioned Harden, who's in his 30s, and I wonder if he was the last kind of superstar, if you want to call him a superstar or not.
He was.
If you want to say like he's the last version of someone to force his hand that way,
I think your opinion may be slightly skewed by the fact that once Jokic wins the MVP this year, you're going to have 4 straight MVP award winners, 2 Jokic, 2 Giannis, who are very much in the vein of what you are saying, which is like, these are guys who I don't know how to put it. So I'm going to use this phrase. They're just built different. Like a superstar like Jokic is just very rare. A guy who wants to go home after a game and fucking sit on his couch with his brothers and have a beer. And like Giannis he could take over the world, and he just seems to be more interested in, I don't know. How do you describe Giannis? He just seems like a very unique personality.
So Myriad Fader's book gave you an insight into the personality of Giannis, where just grateful to be here is almost an understatement to why he's like satisfied with Milwaukee, and it doesn't need a bigger market or like a coast in order to, fulfill his desires,
When's the last time you've heard Giannis Antetokounmpo talk about his brand, Andrew?
Like never. That's the thing. You
think he thinks about sitting around at night thinking about his brand? His
brand is that his brothers are like in the loop of his circle. His own brother, one of his brothers, is literally on the same team as him. So like that's the Giannis brand, is family, and it's why he's been so appreciative, and that he's probably never going to leave Milwaukee, even if they didn't win last year. I think that there are, we don't have to go through everybody in the league, but I think that there will always be players of that ilk, or personalities of that ilk, I should say. Just like there have always been personalities of that ilk in, I don't want to go back too far because player movement wasn't a thing, before 20, 25 years ago. But over the last 25 years, like there have been other people like that. And I think like if you told me that Ja Morant was going to wind up spending his whole career in Memphis, it would not surprise me in the least. But I think that list is still on the shorter side. Like Luka, I personally don't expect Luka to spend his entire career in Dallas. Ooh, okay. I actually think there is a blueprint. Like Dirk spent his whole career in Dallas.
Listen, maybe he does, but they're going to have to put, like, they will have to be a perennial contender. Like if he doesn't win something by a certain point in time, like this is a person who has a chance to be one of the 10 greatest players who ever lived. And that might be selling him short. I think he's going to. Can you tell I'm high on Luka?
Let's get him in the top 70 before you say top 10, please. Dude, make the third round.
My over under for him right now is like 9.5.
9.5
or 10.5, whatever.
Ever.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
I think we're going to look back, and I think we're going to look at it. We're going to be like, okay, there was Jordan, there was LeBron, and
I respect the projection. I'd like to see him exceed.
Let me throw it. I should throw. You know what? I think it's like Jordan, Duncan, LeBron,
Kobe,
Giannis, and then Luka. In terms of, I think Kobe's is a notch down.
Okay.
I think Shaq is like a notch down. All of these people are in, like, Kobe and Shaq are both in my top 10, right?
Yes, I will. Yes, I will let the listeners and YouTube comments do with that what they will. Before we continue with the rest of this video, it is time to tell you all about our good friends over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks is daily fantasy made easy. We are doing overs and unders over at Prizepicks. If you remember from the video on Wednesday, this is the 5-pick flex play that we went with. James Harden under 21.5 points. Take all the unders is what I'll say for James Harden. That is seeming like a pretty good bet going forward. He hit 20. Ian Anderson of the Atlanta Braves. This was one of my hunches that the Mets would get him out of the game before he completes 6 innings. He completed exactly 5 2/3. So that under hit. Luka Doncic, more on him in a second as well. The over on points hit. He had 45 in game 1. He had 35 in game 2. Might be okay just to hit all the overs with Luka. Where I missed though, and this is the pain that can come with this sometimes, how close we were to hitting all 5. Tyler McGill of the New York Mets. So here's what happened. He took a no-hitter into the 5th inning, didn't allow a base runner for most of the game. And it was 0-0 going into the 6th. And we took him at over 17.5 outs. So he needed 3 outs after completing 5 innings of scoreless, hitless baseball. He needed 3 more outs for us to hit the over on this. Gave up 7 runs in the 6th inning of this game that we particularly chose him for. So bad job by him. I'm sticking with it. Good job by us. We thought that this guy was going to be able to get 3 more outs when he had not allowed basically a base runner for most of the game. And Tyler McGill just missed it. And then Bam Adebayo, dude, grabbed 2 more rebounds. We had him at over 10. He had 9. If you want to blame the Sixers for not like making the game competitive, so that way Bam felt the need to get 2 more rebounds, he could, but we were this close to hitting on Bam. So let's get this back and see if we can get 5 more. Once again, in the NBA, I am taking Luka Doncic over. It's 32.5 now. I am going with every Luka over until he stops hitting the over. There's been a very safe bet is to take the over on Luka Doncic points. That is what we're taking at the moment. One apparently other safe bet that's existed, and like shield your eyes, Knicks fans that want to sign Jalen Brunson in the offseason, is Jalen Brunson under in points. Now, if you go to his line or his last couple games, his first 2 games of the series, he has 13 points and 9 points. They are zeroing in on him. You wonder if the bump from being home will exist. I'm going to take the under and trust Suns defense to continue to zero in on him and take the under there. Cam Johnson. So he didn't do this in game 3, but Cam Johnson led the NBA in 3-point percentage for the year. And I'm going to take in he's got hit 2 threes. That one thing I like to do with Prizepicks is look at the 3-point totals. If you look at the 3-pointers made and just see what the half lines are. So like if you trust Spencer Dinwiddie to hit 2 threes, you're asking a guy to hit 2 shots, and you basically look at the numbers to see, does he normally hit 2 shots? So Spencer Dinwiddie, 2 actually would be a pretty safe line. He's hit at least 2 threes in 4 of his last 5 games. We're going with Cam Johnson here, although Spencer Dinwiddie is home. So that is an alternative if you wanted to go that route. And then Jay Crowder, he's hit more than 2 threes in his first 2 games with the Suns. That's after a New Orleans series where he was hitting 1 consistently. I'm going with Cam Johnson. I trust him more. Jimmy Butler rebounds. If you look at Jimmy Butler's, I wanted to get somebody from the Heat Sixers game. If you look at his stats the last 4 games, so 10 rebounds, 9 in game 1, and then 6 in a blowout. So you're guessing if the game is going to be close in Philly, he can get exactly 1 more rebound. I think Jimmy Butler rebounds is safe. And then last but not least, let's go over to baseball, because the New York Mets completed a pretty unreal comeback last night. We got Max Scherzer of the New York Mets on the mound, 7.5 strikeouts. You're asking this guy to get 8 strikeouts. I am very confident in the Mets right now, maybe irrationally so. I'm going to trust that Tyler McGill's fluke of an inning that was the 6th inning on Wednesday is not going to carry over into whatever Max Scherzer, who's just every over has hit for him. It seems like the dependable Max Scherzer is who we'll go with on this 5-pick flex play. If you get all 5 right, you get 10 times whatever you wager. If you get 4 out of 5 right, you still double up your money. And on 3 out of 5, you at least get a quarter of what, I guess 0.4 of what your original wager was. If you wanted to go smaller with it and just take Max Scherzer out of the equation, you have 2 options. You get 4 out of 5 right. It's just a regular flex play and you can get 5 times what you wager, or go for all 4 and it's the 10 times whatever you wager. And so on and so forth. You could play as little as 2 if you wanted to do that. So if we did Luka Doncic over and Jimmy Butler over, you still have a chance on a 2-pick if you get both right to triple whatever you wager. Don't hesitate. Head on over to prizepicks.com, this website that we've been showing you all week, and use promo code Film School. Receive a 100% instant match on your deposit up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com, promo code Film School, an instant match on your first deposit up to $100. Prizepicks, it's daily fantasy made easy. What I will say is the comforting thought I have, and look, if you want to use John's standard, you can. If you want to use my standard, mine and Jeremy's standard, you can. You do not need one of these guys necessarily to win a championship, because there is a world where the Suns play the Heat in the finals, and neither of those teams will have had a superstar, according to either of our standards, according to your standards, at least.
Well, no, like an unequivocal top 7, top 8.
Yeah. Right. So like, it's why if you're like, well, then we shouldn't mortgage the future for Donovan Mitchell, or we shouldn't go after one of these guys or continue to build, toward a better team. It's like, we see a lot, like we saw Jimmy Butler almost win a championship for the Heat against a superstar. And it's the type of thing where you can still get pretty far and be successful and have a chance at a championship without one of those guys. Is, I guess, my comforting thought is that even if the Knicks don't have a path, as we were saying before, to a clear path, I should say, to getting one of those top 7 or 8 guys, there's a path for them to get one of those top 15. And
I was about to say,
you could still be a pretty good team with, if the things break right in the playoffs, a chance to win a title. You know?
Right now, today, the teams that are alive in order, Miami Heat have a top 15 guy in Jimmy Butler and a top.
Thinking about Bam,
top 25 guy,
top 25. Yeah. Top 30 at least. If you want to say he's like,
I was going to go the other way. I was thinking about top 20. Let's split the difference.
Yeah.
Top
25.
Top 25. Celtics have a top 10 guy in Tatum and a top 20 to 25 guy in Brown. All right. Bucks have a top, 1 or 2 guy in Giannis, and then Middleton and Drew, both top 30 guys. Maybe push Middleton down a little bit. Maybe Middleton's more like top 35, right?
Around there. I actually think I'd have Middleton ahead of Drew, but it's like 28, 29 for me.
Okay. So they're both around that range. Yeah. Embiid has one of those 7 or 8 guys plus Harden, which I don't know what the hell you do with him. And then, Maxi's on the come up. He's top 50 for sure. I think top 50, top 60, something like that. Okay. So that's the East. Western Conference, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, two top 15 guys.
Yes, absolutely.
And as I think Benji mentioned on the playback last night, they're, I think, pretty solidly the best roster in the league. Like just top to bottom. Just
go down the line and like we mentioned Cam Johnson, but campaign in a perfect role for him. Bismack Biyombo and JaVale McGee in the perfect roles for them.
Everybody's perfectly situated
and Bridges perfectly complement all the things that Chris Paul and Devin Booker need them to do, so that way they don't have to. They could focus more on offense and certain roles on defense as well.
Yes. Similar situation in Memphis. Top 15 guy, and
I don't think they have another guy top 30, to be honest.
Not top
defensively, 30. Jaren Jackson Jr. gets there, but
so Jackson's defense gets him in the top 50 conversation. I think Bane's in the top 50 conversation right now. Brooks is he's a scorer, but I don't know where you put him. But whatever, that's a team that's like, again, perfectly put together. They make sense together. Luka, another one of those top 8 guys. And then their second best player is Jalen Brunson.
Yeah. Or Dinwiddie. Yeah.
Who the Washington Wizards took on Kristaps Porzingis to get rid of?
It's probably whatever version of Brunson we saw in the first round, and the hopefully not version we see in this round right now.
If you're thinking the Knicks are going to sign him,
that was
hopefully
my
not.
Thoughts, yeah.
And then who's the remaining? The Warriors. Steph, probably bottom bit of that top 8 group, but definitely somewhere in there. And then Clay right now is a top 35, 40 guy. I don't know.
Same with Draymond. Like that, there's another Suns example of like roster construction being perfect and system being perfect,
Great. So half of the teams that are remaining actually have a superstar, like our unequivocal superstar, Luka, Embiid, Giannis, Steph, and the rest of the teams are more like have at least one guy in the top 15. I think actually the rest of the teams most of the rest of the teams have 2 guys in that top 15, and then but solidly built throughout. So yes, there are different ways to do it. You still need the top 15 guy. And if you don't have one of the top 8 guys, you need probably 2 top 15 guys.
all of this was to say, though, and I think this eventually, when Jeremy gets to a cap or no cap, will be his point in advocating for signing Brunson. Like, if because you trade Brunson or because you have Brunson, he can be the trade chip you use toward getting a top 15 guy. Now, it might be multiple steps away, but like this way you can keep RJ and hope he develops into a top 25, 30 guy. You can keep other of your assets. And I mean, look, just to bring this full circle, this is why it makes it so frustrating what happened to Julius this year, because I think a lot of us had the illusions that he had made his way into the top 25 conversation.
25, 30. Yes.
Dude, I mean, don't make me pull up some of the charts we used for Patreon of where we had him. Like there was top 22 conversations for Julius Randle. And last year by the NBA voting, he finished top 4 in forwards. So like
I wrote,
go ahead.
I researched the hell out of it, and I made what I felt was a valid argument for why he could have gotten as high as the guy 4th in MVP. 4th.
Yeah. And that's why it's so frustrating is that going into last offseason, it was, well, how do we get Julius another one of those guys? Which is why the RJ debates of you don't trade him for this guy, you don't trade him for that guy. When the thought of like, well, we already have a top 25 guy. Now we got to go get a top 15 guy and let's see what this coach can turn that into. And when Julius turned into a top 60 guy, now we have so many other questions, which is what makes this offseason so fascinating is does the front office think that top 25 guy is still there or holy shit, we just gave a top 60 guy a 4-year extension. Now what do we do? And that's, I think, my biggest fear, concern, thought about what this front office is planning to do this offseason.
It's not that they gave a top 60 guy a 4-year extension that pays him like a top 50 guy, because who gives a shit? It's like you're quibbling or you're picking nits there. It's the fact that they gave again, I'm using your generous designation of top 60. If you want to go
top 80, top 120, John, like I'm saying.
Here's my point.
Yeah.
Maybe based on the fact that he's a big guy who doesn't seem to want to go to the rim and doesn't protect the rim and can't hit a jump shot. Maybe he's not a top anything guy. Maybe he's a guy that other teams around the league. And again, we've gone over this with episodes I've done with Jeremy, what other teams see him as. Maybe I'm overstating it and maybe this is too much, but I will refuse to get off the hill of, I think there are teams that look at him and be like, yeah, I don't care what the fuck his contract is. He's not coming anywhere near our team. And that's the bigger issue than did they give an X-rated ranked guy this much? It is specific to him.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? And it's the fear I have that nothing's going to get done. Or listen, we don't want to go down this road, but the opposite's going to get done. That the way we looked at cap or no cap going into this with asset consolidation, the other way to consolidate your assets is to take all the young assets and turn them into something. And no one wants to go down that road that they may consider that. But Leon Rose could send out all the season ticket holders letters to be like, look at all our young guys. And then once he's got you locked in, that we're trading for whoever. You know?
Yeah, but here's what Leon Rose knows, right? Leon Rose knows. I'll throw out the most likely name, in my view at least, Donovan Mitchell. He knows if he trades for Donovan Mitchell is here in a Knicks uniform and they are winning basketball games.
Yeah.
No one's going to give a shit.
Are you sure about that?
Okay. A subset of Knicks Twitter will give many shits.
Yes.
And they will be very vocal. And you know how much Leon Rose is going to care about?
If they're winning. Folks? Yeah. And the building's sold out. He won't care.
He will not give 1 ounce of a mouse fart about what those people have to say.
This is where I come back to my mellow defending days where they were winning 54 games and beating the Heat 3 out of 4 times and beating the Spurs twice. And then those 2 teams meeting in the finals and everybody wondering, what did the Knicks accomplish this year? It's like, well, they contended for a title, something they haven't done since the 90s. That is a legitimate thing that happened this year. And all the people that opined for like, but I miss Gallinari, and that 2010 half a season was special when we won 20 games and lost 18, you know? And when you have a chance to elevate to the level of, we have a top 15 guy and maybe Julius turns into a top 30 guy again. I don't wonder if that's what they're thinking. And is that the path that they're going to go?
I don't think they are thinking that specifically about it. I think if I had to guess, they're just if we could get one of the top 15, we could get one of those. And we're throwing around 15. We'll make it 16. We'll make it 14, whatever your list is. And like, I actually think 16 might be the right number because remember we were going through our all NBA teams and we were like, man, there's 15 spots for 16 guys. Yeah. And like at the time we were going back and forth about Donovan Mitchell and Trae Young.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, it's an unnecessary correction, but we had technically said 17 because we didn't know if Gobert versus Cat was a thing, but it was like either one being on the outside looking in. They're 16 or 17.
16 or 17. I forget if I think Butler was in for
Butler was on our, it was also Butler or Siakam was on our third team.
That's right. And
because LeBron can go fuck himself with his 56 games and missing the playoffs. Yes. And
with all the respect, you were right. One on the Siakam thing. I was wrong to not have him in the discussion. Two, he ain't in this class. The class is what Siakam may be the first, the glass ceiling of Pascal Siakam. He can't break through. Anyway, whatever your number is, once you have one of those guys, as long as you didn't mortgage everything to get one of those guys, and that was kind of the issue with Melo, is like they didn't literally mortgage everything, but they gave a lot and they didn't have a whole lot left. And what little they did have left, they traded for Andre Bargnani. Bad job by you. As long as you don't mortgage everything and you still have enough left in the cupboard to go get another thing, then all of a sudden you get in the conversation with all of these teams that we're talking about where, okay, we don't have a top 8 guy, but we have whatever it is, 2 in the top 15 or 3 in the top 50, one of which is in the top 50. Like, you can get in that conversation. Now, historically, and the last thing, and then we'll finish up, it is impossible to get into this conversation of, we have built a contender with this as the path without having at least one guy that you've drafted that is in your top 3. It does not happen. So I think that is where maybe for anybody looking for a silver lining to this conversation who wants to keep the kids and wants to do it like with the homegrown, I don't think RJ's going anywhere. I really don't. I don't think he's going anywhere because first of all, I just don't think he has the value around the league right now that maybe Knicks fans attributed to him. Like, I truth be told, if you could get Donovan Mitchell tomorrow and all you had to give up was RJ Barrett, I think RJ Barrett would be on a plane to Utah.
Yeah.
When that trade could legally happen. Actually, it could happen right now because Utah's been eliminated. The money wouldn't work, neither here nor there. But Utah's not going to do that. And so partially it is for that reason, but also, I think they see RJ as like a part of like, yeah, when we get our core together, I think it makes sense for him to be in it.
And it's where, again, the Jalen Brunson signing then allows you to keep RJ because Jalen Brunson would be headlining said trade potentially. And the salary would make more sense. And it's why, like, we just need to play the kids movement. I respect and I appreciate. I think there's a world you can do both and still get better next year. And I wonder what Leon Rose is thinking. What if we did just like have a team that won 35 games, but Obi Toppin and Emmanuel quickly start 75 of them. And the fan base loves it when we like lose close to 50 games, but they're young and exciting,
Like this is a conversation to have at a different time, but just very briefly, wins. And we've had this conversation before other seasons. Wins should not matter next season. the perception of the franchise around the league and amongst those people who may want to come to this team matters very much. But the specific amount of wins, and yes, there's absolutely a world where it would be better for them to win fewer games. I don't think anyone would quibble about that.
Do they have the right coach if wins should not matter next year, John? That's a legit question right there.
Again, and I've said this before, it's not a healthy situation to have a coach who you feel like you need to tie his hands.
Yeah.
So as to get where you want to go as a franchise.
You literally have to put the ingredients in front of him to make the meal you want, rather than, hey, go make me this.
And lock the fucking cabinets.
Yeah.
As someone who has 3 child safety locks in his kitchen right now. No, but if you're asking me do I think Tom Thibodeau is as good a coach as there is for young players? Yeah, I still do. And I think the proof is in the pudding this year. It's the decision-making as to whether he plays those guys enough for your druthers. Yeah. But in terms of instilling habits and like showing the attention and putting those guys in being in positions to be successful, like all that stuff is like, if you don't agree with that, I don't know what you're watching.
Well, no, it's not my question. It's if next season wins don't matter, is Thibs the right coach with the team? Like if they should be, they should be prioritizing OB and quickly playing through their mistakes. Like learning on the job.
But that's the thing. It's like, what are we even talking about here? They've played through their mistakes. They're at the point where they're already arguably better than the veterans that got more minutes than them this year.
But we're talking about 2 guys that through the bulk of the season weren't playing through their mistakes. At the end of the season, those 5 games where nobody gave a fuck.
And now it's a new day. And
this is where, if you believe the water carrier in chief, from the New York Post, that he actually is remorseful about not playing the kids sooner, then maybe listen, if Thibs comes out with the full roster next year and like quickly plays 30 minutes of coming off the bench and OB plays 10 minutes next to Randle and 20 minutes elsewhere, then okay. We saw improvement, and in year 3, they're ready to take more responsibility. I'm on board with this process.
And we have gone round and round and round, and we end at the place that we started, which is,
where's Julius?
So many of these issues would be solved if you moved on from one guy.
And it's why my biggest question, to go back to the beginning, is do they move on from him? I genuinely don't know. And
they're playing with fire if they don't.
Look, I think I've come off as much more sympathetic to Julius across the board this season.
You can be sympathetic all you want. It shouldn't necessarily impact your thinking on this.
Oh, no. They should move on from him. It's just like the vitriol of like, fuck that guy that I push back on. Because I don't think it's like...
I'm saying that. F those guys.
Who would say that, John? Who would dare?
Literally.
Quite literally, John. It's more of like... I saw how much he apparently, from the outside looking in, literally to like your social media branding of like how much he bought into this, and like why I started following sports in the first place. Again, because of the teams I root for had very little to do with how much they won, you know? And so I fell in love with the Mike Piazzas and the David Wrights and the Patrick Ewings and the Allen Houstons and like a lot of these guys that you got to know for other reasons than winning. And Julius Randle for one season, it's like, oh, look at him. He's like bringing his kid to all these games. And, you know, when Kendra announced her pregnancy, we all jumped on board and was like, oh, another child into the Knicks world. Like, congratulations. And by like New Year's Eve, it was like, I'm glad he got COVID, and all of that flipped. And it's why I am empathizing from his perspective. It's like, damn, 25 games of a new roster that I've been trying to make work. And it's like, this guy that's shooting 20% from 3 is who you guys want to see. What did I do wrong after like playing through a season in a bubble for you guys? And it's why I'm empathetic to his situation. Having said that, like, the numbers don't lie. The effort we saw in the second half of the season doesn't lie. And the best thing for this team, and I don't know how anybody disagrees with it, is for Julius Randle to play on a different team going forward. I don't know if Leon Rose officially believes that just yet, which is my biggest concern.
Well, we're gonna find out soon enough.
Yeah, we'll see. Yes,
what's today?
Today's
May 5th.
Cinco de Mayo. You asked that at the beginning of the show.
Cinco de Mayo. We'll find 2 months from now if we'll know the answer.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
I hope.
See, this is why we need to record podcasts occasionally together, in which we talk about the basketball team that we cover.
Count me in. Absolutely. Hopefully something changes so that way hopefully it's not under the circumstances either that someone's microphone didn't work and that we have to just jump on.
All right. Yeah. You got to go enjoy Doctor Strange, which I will be also doing shortly.
We got to make one programming note, by the way.
Yes. What?
So everybody has come to expect that this pod comes out every Monday morning / Sunday night we record, and then Monday morning it comes out. Well, 2 things happen next week. Sunday is Mother's Day. And because Sunday is Mother's Day, John is whining and dining the mothers in his life. And Jeremy is also going to be celebrating the mothers in his life. I've now got to get used to the idea of in-laws. And so
welcome to that world.
Some mothers in my life need to be honored. So we're taking Mother's Day off. And then recording Monday night, which will replace our normal Wednesday morning pod because we're not recording on Tuesday, which is
for reasons that we do not need to get into. We are not recording
somebody
on Tuesday.
In our lives that you all know and hopefully still love is having a birthday, and I'll let you guys figure out who that is.
I don't even know if the people I'll be with on Tuesday love me. But
regardless, because John's birthday is on Tuesday, we will not be recording Tuesday, but instead releasing our normal cap or no cap Monday night for Tuesday morning. So on that YouTube video, you can wish John a happy birthday and then hopefully embarrass him all day on Twitter, which you probably won't see on Tuesday.
No, I'll dip in.
So when it's about you, though, you'll dip.
I hate you so much. You're the worst. You're just the worst person. You and Julius Randle go on the same fucking boat to Italy. Have fun.
There we go. Yes, well, over in Italy, exactly.
I was about to say it'll be a long boat.
Well, long boat ride for me, all the way from the Hudson, but I'll start now. Maybe I'll get there by Tuesday.
Thank you, Andrew. This was fun. Thank you, everybody else, for not minding. Just a couple of guys talking Knicks basketball. And thanks for checking out the show. We'll be back with you with more fun and games very soon. Peace out.